break is kind of like the last month before you want to break, and so it's been like 6 weeks.
Parece como que como prediqué el último domingo del mes de enero, parece como que estamos en como 6 más.
Okay, but I'll put this up in prayer.
Comenzaré con una oración.
Dear Lord, thank you for this night that you bring us out here, united in your name, Lord, to gather and worship. Thankful to you, Lord. Speak the strength and speak your words to me, Lord, and let it touch anyone's heart that needs to hear it here. Across it online, Lord. Thank you for everything you do in our lives, to Lord, and that's all we're going to say to you after this. Pray. Amen.
Amén.
Okay, so I'm going to start off, I'm going to read it. I'm a fast reader, so I'll get through it.
Voy a empezar, voy a leerlo. Leo rápido, así que leeré rápido. No me tardaré.
I was yelling at my dad because I was like, hey, you pick such long passages.
Siempre le decía a mi papá, estos son los pasajes muy largos.
I was like choosing this one, and I was stuck at 15. I was like, no, I can't stop at 15, I go to 20.
Escogí este y dije, voy a detener en el 15. No, puedo parar en el 15, voy al 20. Y tampoco.
He's like, I can't do Noah like that, or Moses.
No puedo ser Noé, Moisés, Carlos.
Okay, so Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 through 34.
Hebreos capítulo 11, 1 34.
Faith is the confidence in what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things we cannot see. Through their faith, the people in the days of old earned a good reputation. By faith, we understand that the entire universe was formed at God's command, that what we see did not come from anything that can be seen. It was by faith that Abel brought a more acceptable offering to God than Cain did. Abel's offering gave evidence that he was a righteous man, and God showed his approval of his gifts. Although Abel is long dead, he still speaks to us by his example of faith. It was by faith that Enoch was taken up to heaven without dying. He disappeared because God took him. Before he was taken up, he was known as a person who pleased God. And it is impossible to please God without faith. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists, and he rewards those who sincerely seek him. It was by faith that Noah built a large boat to save his family from the flood. He obeyed God who warned him about things that never happened before. By his faith, Noah condemned the rest of the world, and he received the righteousness that comes by faith. It was by faith that Abraham obeyed God when he called him to leave home and go to another land that God would give him his inheritance. He went without knowing where he was going, and even when he reached the land God promised him, he lived there by faith. For he was like a foreigner living in tents, and so did Isaac and Jacob, who inherited the same promise. Abraham was confidently looking forward to a city with eternal foundations, a city designed and built by God. It was by faith that even Sarah was able to have a child, though she was barren and was too old. She believed that God would keep his promise. And so a whole nation came from this one man who was as good as dead. A nation with so many people, like the stars in the sky and the sand and the seashore, there's no way to count them. All these people died still believing what God had promised them. They did not receive what God had promised, but they saw it all from a distance and welcomed it. They agreed that they were foreigners and nomads here on earth. Obviously, people who say things are looking forward to a country that they can call their own. If they had longed for the country they came back from, they could have gone back. But they were looking for a better place, a heavenly homeland. That is why God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. It was by faith that Abraham offered Isaac as a sacrifice when God was testing him. Abraham, who had received God's promises, was ready to sacrifice his only son, Isaac. Even though God had told him, Isaac is the son through whom your descendants will be counted. Abraham received that reason that if Isaac died, God was able to bring him back to life again. And in a sense, Abraham did receive his son back from the dead. It was by faith that Isaac promised blessings for the future of his sons, Jacob and Esau. It was by faith that Jacob, when he was old and dying, blessed each of Joseph's sons and bowed in worship as he leaned on his staff. It was by faith that Joseph, when he was about to die, said confidently that people of Israel would leave Egypt. He even commanded them to take his bones with them when they left. It was by faith that Moses' parents hid him for 3 months when he was born. They saw that God had given them an unusual child, and they were not afraid to disobey the king's command. It was by faith that Moses, when he grew up, refused to be called the son of the Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to share of oppression of God's people instead of enjoying the fleeting pleasure of sin. He thought it was better to suffer for the sake of Christ than own the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking ahead to his great reward. It was by faith that Moses left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He kept right on going because he kept his eyes on the one who was invisible. It was by faith that Moses commanded the people of Israel to keep the Passover and sprinkle blood on the doorsteps so that the angel of death would not kill their firstborn sons. It was by faith that the people of Israel went right through the Red Sea as though they were on dry ground. But when the Egyptians tried to follow, they were all drowned. It was by faith that the people of Israel marched around Jericho for 7 days and the walls came crashing down. It was by faith that Rahab the prostitute was not destroyed with the people in her city who refused to obey God, for she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. How much more do I need to say? It would take too long to recount the stories of the faith of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, and Samuel, and all the prophets. By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms, ruled with justice, and received what God had promised them. They shut the mouths of lions, quenched the flames of fire, escaped death by the edge of the sword. Their weakness was turned to strength. They became strong in battle and put whole armies to flight. So in case you guys didn't know, this message is about faith.
Si no lo sabían, es un mensaje acerca de la fe.
I just couldn't stop. I was like, I didn't want to read that much, but then I was like, okay, I can't stop there, I can't stop there, I can't stop there.
No podía detener. No puedo parar aquí, no puedo parar aquí, no puedo parar aquí.
So in Hebrews here,
Aquí en Hebreos,
we're pretty much told of like the all-stars of the Bible who had such great faith.
se nos relata prácticamente de las estrellas de la fe. Los hombres y mujeres que tuvieron fe.
We all heard the word faith, we all have faith, but what is faith?
Todos hemos escuchado la palabra fe, y tenemos fe, pero la pregunta es, ¿qué es fe?
What does the Bible tell us what is faith, and what does a normal non-believer have faith in?
¿Qué es lo que la Biblia nos dice tener fe? ¿Y qué es un creyente normal? ¿Cómo es un creyente normal teniendo fe?
Faith in little things, faith in big things.
Fe en cosas pequeñas, fe en cosas grandes.
Natural faith.
Fe natural.
Faith without even thinking it, just
Fe sin pensarlo.
having confidence that something's going to happen.
Tener la confianza que algo va a suceder.
Without even really knowing.
Sin realmente saberlo.
My beloved wife
Mi amada esposa
sent me a video the day before when I'm pretty much putting it all together in my head.
me mandó un video cuando estaba preparando el mensaje
And it really impacted me. It was a really good one.
y me impactó, fue muy bueno.
She put it on her story, or maybe someone,
Lo puse en nuestra historia.
if you skipped over it, just shame on me.
No lo vieron,
It was, he used examples of faith that people every day share in without even thinking it. They just expect it, and it's going to happen because they know it's going to happen.
Utilizó ejemplos de fe que todos, de una u otra manera, simplemente lo esperan. Saben que va a suceder, creen que va a suceder.
He uses examples, but I have a couple of my own.
Él usó algunos ejemplos, pero yo tengo algunos de los míos.
When we're going somewhere in our cars that we've never been before, what do we use?
Cuando vamos a ir a un lugar en nuestro carro que no hemos estado antes, ¿qué utilizamos?
We use our GPS, right?
Utilizamos nuestro GPS,
Okay.
¿correcto?
So if I want to go, if I'm in Wisconsin and I want to go to McDonald's, even though I don't know where it is,
Si estoy en Wisconsin y quiero ir al McDonald's, que no sé dónde está,
I type in McDonald's and it'll take me there.
le escribo ahí McDonald's y me sale para que me lleve ahí.
Or if you're going to go here to downtown and some of you guys maybe don't know how to get there,
O aquí, si alguien no sabe cómo llegar al centro, el GPS te va a llevar.
So you type in Sears Tower, okay, and you just press go, and you get in your car, you just go, right?
Le aplastas, le pones ahí el Sears Tower, lo seleccionas y te lleva.
Do any of you guys, when you type in Sears Tower, do you go look to see what roads it's going to take you on, what left and right, every single page?
Cuando ustedes seleccionan un lugar, por ejemplo, Sears Tower, ustedes se ponen a observar vuelta por vuelta, por dónde les va a llevar, vuelta por vuelta.
No, right?
Normalmente no.
Why?
¿Correcto? ¿Por qué?
You've never been there before. Why do you not double check it?
Si no has estado ahí antes, ¿por qué no lo chequeas?
Because you have faith in the nerds that created this little computer, the algorithms, they're going to get you.
Porque tienes fe en estos inteligentes que crearon este sistema, esta aplicación, que ella misma te va a llevar.
And the man-made satellites in the sky, you're going to ping down to your phone, and they're going to get you exactly where you need to be at the exact time you need to be. You can double think.
Y las cosas que están allá arriba, que el uso del nombre, te van a dirigir, te van a llevar punto por punto y sin pensarlo, lo vas a depositar tu confianza.
It's a really simple thing that a lot of us use on a daily, that we have 100% faith in, and we don't even question.
Es algo tan sencillo que nosotros ponemos nuestra fe al 100% sin preguntar.
Maybe some of us have fear of flying, but who's the fear of flying?
Tal vez algunos de nosotros tenemos temor de viajar por avión.
So, was anyone ever nervous at first when you first got on a plane?
Algunos de ustedes estuvieron nerviosos cuando la primera vez se subieron al avión.
Oh, okay. Some people have a fear of flying, that's fine, but we don't. You know, we have.
Algunos tienen temor, pero nosotros no.
Why not?
¿Por qué no?
I mean, you're in a little aluminum tube thing, 35,000 feet up in the air, 600 miles an hour.
Es un tubo de aluminio 35 pies de lo alto.
By a man-made aircraft.
Por un aparato, un avión creado por el hombre.
Sitting through the sky, and you don't even double think. You get on the plane, you sit down, and you go to your final destination.
Subes al avión y sin pensarlo ya está por allá.
No, we have faith. We have,
a tu destino.
again, we have faith in the nerds that created the airplane, and that they know what they're doing, and we have confidence in them.
Tenemos confianza, tenemos fe en las personas que crearon este invento, que crearon y que nos subimos y aceptamos, tenemos fe sin ningún problema.
Those are two things that we do on a daily basis. When you get in your car, we have confidence that if you go turn to the right, it's going to go right. To the left, it's going to go left.
Cuando te subes a tu carro, tienes tú la confianza de que cuando le das vuelta a la derecha, el carro va a dar vuelta. Cuando volteas el volante a la izquierda, el carro va a ir a la izquierda.
You sat down in these chairs, you have confidence that they weren't going to break, right?
Cuando te sentaste en estas sillas, tienes la confianza que las sillas no se van a caer.
There's so many things in this physical world that we're so accustomed to putting our faith in that we don't even question.
Estamos tan acostumbrados en las cosas en este mundo, de las cosas pequeñas, que ni siquiera las cuestionamos.
Every human being, saved or not, has faith in something.
Todo ser humano tiene fe en algo.
God instills that in us.
Dios puso eso en nosotros.
It's a matter of what you put your faith in.
Solamente es en qué o en quién tienes tú puesta la fe.
Think about, I named a couple of things that we've encountered in our lives, and if we put that, I call it natural faith, into God, into those little things, we should be putting that natural faith into God.
He nombrado algunas cosas pequeñas que ponemos nosotros nuestra confianza, nuestra fe en ellas. Y si lo hacemos en esas cosas pequeñas, debemos entonces, o debemos mejor, poner nuestra confianza en Dios.
You can't have faith in big things and big trials if you don't have faith in the little things, in little everyday trials.
No puedes tener fe en las cosas grandes, en los retos, en los problemas, en las dificultades grandes, si no tienes fe en las cosas pequeñas.
Faith in waking up and praying to God.
Fe en levantarse y orar a Dios.
having faith in Him that He's going to guide you throughout your day.
Tener la fe, la confianza en que Él te va a guiar durante el día.
He's going to give you the words to speak with people you're going to encounter.
Que te va a dar las palabras para hablar con las personas con quien te vas a encontrar.
He's going to help you in your homework.
Que te va a ayudar a hacer la tarea.
He's going to help you at work with customers.
Que te va a ayudar en el trabajo, con clientes.
This kind of faith that we have in these physical things in this world is actually we should have more faith in our God who created us.
La fe pequeña que tenemos en el día a día de nuestra vida, las cosas pequeñas, nos empuja y nos debe motivar a tener fe en nuestro Dios, que es lo más grande.
It says here in the beginning that it's impossible to please God without faith.
Dice aquí, hacia el principio, es imposible de agradar a Dios sin fe.
We can't please God without having faith that what His words tell us are true.
No, tenemos que tener fe de que las palabras que Él nos está diciendo son verdad.
God sent His Son down and died for our sins and for our salvation.
Dios envió a su Hijo para morir por nosotros, por nuestros pecados, para nuestra salvación.
And you know, sometimes we get criticized for the amount of faith that Bible-believing Christians have.
Y muchas de las veces, o varias veces, somos criticados por esa clase de fe que tenemos.
And I haven't had this exact encounter, but similar, and I've seen it.
No he tenido este encuentro, pero es similar y también lo he visto.
How do you know God's real?
¿Cómo sabes que Dios es real?
You're saying He created everything, the heavens and the earth, and He controls everyone, and You sent Jesus to die for your sins.
Tú dices que Dios en los cielos creó todo, que controla todo y que Jesús envió a su Hijo Jesús para morir por nuestros pecados.
That's honestly straight up the enemy when they try to attack you for your faith in that, because I'm sure we've encountered stuff like that.
Es un ataque directo del enemigo cuando te hace preguntas de esa índole.
It's so hard for people to comprehend that we believe in a God who created the heavens and the earth and all the miracle signs and wonders we see here, but they believe that the world was created by
Es posible para ellos creer, o difícil creer, que Dios creó el cielo y la tierra y lo que vemos y todo, pero es más fácil para ellos creer que es imposible para ellos creer que Dios creó con una pequeña todo lo que hay, lo que existe.
I like to call it what scientists and evolutionists call it is the Big Bang.
A mí me gusta llamarlo, como los científicos o los evolucionistas lo llaman, el Big Bang.
They have faith in their little scientific numbers that everything was created from a little molecule that went boom.
Ellos tienen fe de creer que todo lo que existe fue creado por una molécula, molécula.
You know, you tell those people, I believe in a Big Bang too. God said, let there be light. And went,
Y yo le digo a esas personas, yo también creo en el Big Bang, que Dios dijo, sea luz y
created man, and he went,
y creó el hombre y
lions, my favorite animal.
los leones, el mejor, mi animal favorito.
You know, it's crazy that people question your faith, you know, but when you ask them, like, well, what do you believe in? You know, what do you believe in?
Es un poquito loco cuando la gente cuestiona tu fe, pero tú te puedes decir, ¿y tú? ¿Tú qué crees?
It's like now, like they're like mad that we're not scared of the virus.
Como ahora, ellos están enojados de que nosotros no estamos con miedo
You get shunned.
ante el virus.
You get shunned if you're not scared of the virus.
Se enoja, te molesta contigo porque tú no tienes temor del virus.
Especially if you're a Christian. I've seen it on the internet, and I've seen people attack me for it.
Lo he visto en el internet, cómo la gente te ataca por ello.
You know, another thing you can tell them is, you believe in a virus you can't see, but why don't you believe in God? You know, like, oh.
Puedes creer en un virus que no puedes ver, pero no. Si puedes creer en un virus que no puedes ver, ¿por qué no puedes creer en Dios?
there's in like the end of this chapter, or I read, there's way too many examples of these all-stars, so I'm not going to go over all of them.
Hay demasiados ejemplos de estos héroes de la fe, pero no voy a repasar todos.
I'll just go over a couple, but
Vamos a repasar algunos.
when you're having a breakthrough in your faith, when you finally decide that, okay, I'm going to put my faith in God,
Cuando tú decides que vas a poner tu fe en Dios y empiezas a aprender, a crecer en tu fe,
you're going to get resistance. You really are.
tendrás resistencia, de verdad, vas a tener.
God tells us.
Dios nos lo dice,
He told us in the Bible, He told us ourselves.
nos dice en la palabra, nos ha dicho a nosotros.
Could you imagine the faith that Noah had to have for all those years of building that ark?
Ustedes se pueden imaginar en la fe que Noé tuvo que tener al estar construyendo por todos esos años esa gran arca.
I believe he was building for 120 years. Could you literally imagine in a world where it says there was no one good on this planet besides Moses and his family?
¿Se puede usted imaginar que durante todo ese periodo de tiempo la generación que no tenía nada bueno, no era buena, lo que pudo haber pensado durante ese periodo de tiempo mientras se construía el arca?
If his faith wasn't already crazy. It says that God told him about things that had never happened before.
Para que vean la clase de fe loca que tuvo, de creerle a Dios de que iban a suceder cosas que jamás habían sucedido.
I don't know if that exactly meant like it never rained before, or mountain rain that was going to come, the earth opening up. No one saw that before.
No sabemos exactamente, pero pudo haber referido de que iba a caer mucha agua del cielo, las fuentes iban a abrir, todo eso no había sucedido antes.
To have this kind of faith, you also need like patience, discipline.
Esta clase de fe se le agregaba paciencia, disciplina.
Because, like it tells us, some of these people died without God's promise fulfilling, but they died believing in that promise.
Como dice en Hebreos aquí, que algunos de las personas creyendo murieron sin recibir la promesa.
It's easy when you get the first word from God.
Es muy fácil cuando tú recibes primeramente la palabra de Dios.
I'm sure Noah, when he was told this, he was probably like, okay, I'm geeked, I'm psyched.
Ya, muy bien, dice Dios, seguro cuando Dios le habló por primera vez a Noé, dijo, muy bien, vamos a hacerlo.
Did he struggle at all in the 120 years? I mean, he was human, I'm sure he did.
Tuvo tal vez una flaqueó durante ese periodo de tiempo, tal vez, me puedo imaginar que sí.
Do we struggle, throughout our day when God promises us something and it's not there yet?
Nosotros batallamos, flaqueamos tal vez, tenemos dificultad en el periodo de tiempo, tal vez durante el día, cuando no hemos recibido, no hemos obtenido, no hemos llegado todavía.
Faith, discipline, and patience are like the hardest thing to do with these nowadays because everything you get is so fast.
Fe, paciencia, disciplina. En estos tiempos es muy difícil porque todo se mueve muy rápido.
We're so used to getting any piece of information so fast.
Estamos tan acostumbrados a recibir cualquier tipo de información muy rápido.
I'm so glad my wife got a new phone because when I asked her to look something up, I could never wait because the phone was so slow.
Estoy tan contento de que mi esposa finalmente consiguió un teléfono nuevo, porque cuando le pedía que consiguiera una información, se tardaba las eternidades, porque era muy despacio su teléfono viejo. Abraham
obeyed when God told him to leave home and to go to another land that God would give him as his inheritance.
Obedeció a Dios cuando le dijo que dejara su casa y se fuera a otro lugar, un lugar que Dios le iba a dar por herencia.
He left home.
Dejó su casa.
Immediately I thought of Daniel and Anaisa.
Inmediatamente pensé en Daniel y Anaísa.
You know, we were all there. I think a lot of us were there when I called them to Guadalajara.
Estábamos ahí cuando el Señor les hizo el llamado. Ahora sabemos Guadalajara.
But this is where God's a little humorous. He literally told them, but I don't know when, or you don't know when I'm sending you guys.
Dios, miren cómo es Dios, con humor. Les voy a mandar, pero no saben a dónde los voy a mandar, cuándo los voy a mandar.
That immediately be triggered, like, that's been some faith, patience.
Inmediatamente yo dije, eso se va a requerir fe, paciencia.
You know, that's why anytime we hear on Tuesdays when people come up here, you know, share their stories and what they're praying for, it's always important for us as church to pray for our brothers and sisters.
Especialmente es muy importante los martes cuando los hermanos pasan a dar testimonio para estar orando por nuestros hermanos y nuestras hermanas.
Because it's hard. I mean, they're back in their original home.
Porque es difícil. Están de regreso a su casa de nacimiento.
We forgot instructions and when they're going to Guadalajara, when is that? We have no idea.
Esperando por las instrucciones de Dios. ¿Cuándo tendrán que salir para Guadalajara? No tenemos ni idea.
But we believe and they believe
Pero nosotros creemos y ellos creen
that God's going to send them there at some point in time.
que Dios los va a mandar en algún tiempo determinado.
You know, and whether it's 1 more year, 2 more years, 5 more years, we don't know.
¿Un año? 2 años? 5 años? No lo sabemos.
We have to keep in prayer and in faith and discipline and patience, believing God's promises.
Tenemos que mantener en oración, creyendo, paciencia, creyendo en las promesas de Dios.
I encourage you when you guys, you know, when God's ever promised them to you, this is a really good passage to come back at. This is the all-stars of faith.
Les animo cuando tengan la oportunidad que regresen y que vuelvan a leer este pasaje muy hermoso, muy especial. Nos habla de los héroes de la fe.
A way that God helps you, He helps you in your faith. He helps you in your faith by winning little battles.
Dios te ayuda en tu fe mientras te ayuda a ganar batallas pequeñas.
It's really important to remember little victory battles that God allows you to win, to then to win the war.
Es muy importante recordar las batallas pequeñas que Dios te ayuda a ganar para poder, especialmente, enfrentarte en el mundo.
Our human flesh can win 10 things good can happen in our lives and that God told us, but on the 11th thing, if we come across a speed bump, we forget the last 10 things that happened.
Dios nos puede ayudar a ganar tal vez 10 victorias, pero cuando llegan a 11 tal vez un bordo en el camino, ese nos hace olvidar de los otros 10 que hemos ganado, de las otras 10 victorias que hemos tenido.
We're going to Isaiah 43, 1 through 3.
Isaías 43, del 1 al 3.
I love these verses. I think I used it 2 messages ago.
Me encantan estos versículos, que los usé 2 meses atrás.
Isaiah 43, verses 1 through 3 say, But now, O Jacob, listen to the Lord who created you. O Israel, the one who formed you, says, Do not be afraid, for I have ransomed you. I have called you by name, you are mine. When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. For I am the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, your Savior. I gave Egypt as a ransom for your freedom.
Pero ahora, ojo, Jacob, escucha al Señor quien te creó. Oh Israel, el que te formó dice, no tengas miedo, porque he pagado tu rescate, te he llamado por tu nombre, eres mío. Cuando pases por las aguas profundas, yo estaré contigo. Cuando pases por los ríos de dificultad, no te ahogarás. Cuando pases por el fuego de la opresión, no te quemarás, las llamas no te consumirán. Pues yo soy el Señor tu Dios, el Santo de Israel, tu Salvador. Yo di a Egipto como rescate por tu libertad. En tu lugar di a Etiopía y a Seba.
I like that in verse 1 it says, speaking to us obviously, O Israel, the one who formed you says.
Me gusta este pasaje, esta parte dice, oh Israel, el que te formó dice.
Such a simple half of a verse, but if you think about it, it's stating an obvious fact. The God who created you is about to say this.
Es muy importante que Dios que te creó está diciendo esto.
The God who created each and every one of your soul, your heart, your limbs, your eyes, your nose, your ears, is about to speak.
El Dios que te creó todo, tu nariz, tus ojos, tus oídos, todo está a punto de hablar, de decir algo.
I like to symbolism of pain that he refers to in Isaiah here when it talks about drowning and burning.
Me gusta el simbolismo del dolor, de ahogarse y quemarse.
The seriousness of those two physical pain is a very serious thing.
La seriedad de ese dolor es algo muy serio.
Anyone ever been in the water when you literally like are far from the edge and you're like low-key like
Alguien estaba en el agua y de repente como sientes que se está ahogando.
anyone ever been to that point?
¿Alguien me ha pasado?
Yes. My mom doesn't like water.
A mi mamá no le gusta el agua.
She doesn't like the deep.
No le gusta el agua profunda. Lo odia.
It's a very serious pain.
Es un dolor muy serio.
Your lungs start closing up.
Tus pulmones empiezan a cerrar.
Maybe your head or bottom and you swallow water, which makes it even worse.
Quieres salir y de repente tragas agua, lo que hace peor.
They say that it could be anyone, your most loved person. If you're thrown into the ocean with your most loved person, your natural instinct kicks in and you would want to use them to keep you afloat.
Dicen que aunque te avienten, te arrojen o te encuentres con la persona que más amas en el agua queriéndote ahogar, utilizarás a esa persona como una piedra, como alguien que quiere subir para salvar tu vida.
Drowning is not a fun thing. It's not. It's very painful.
Ahogarse no es algo bueno, es muy doloroso.
The anxiousness of even before none of us have been conscious of it, but it's a very terrible feeling.
Es un sentimiento de ansiedad terrible.
And that's what happens. That's how sometimes we feel, you know, one way or another in our life, in our walk.
Y muchas de las veces nosotros, de una u otra manera, nos sentimos en nuestra vida, en nuestra caminada.
Swimming is, the actual swimming, is probably one of the best physical conditions that you can do to your body.
Nadar es uno de los mejores, tal vez el mejor ejercicio físico que le puedes hacer para el beneficio de tu cuerpo.
Because it works out every part of your body. Every single part.
Porque trabaja cada una de las partes de tu cuerpo.
Having faith in God when you're walking through the deep waters is the best thing you can do for your spiritual body.
Tener fe cuando pases por aguas, atravieses por aguas profundas, es lo mejor que puedes hacer, es tener fe en Dios.
Who's gotten burned before?
¿Quién se ha quemado anteriormente?
Like a serious burn, cocinando,
Una quemada seria.
flipping a tortilla,
O darle vuelta a las tortillas.
or, you know, at football practice when you've been out.
Pero sin usar las cachuelas, ¿verdad?
Yeah, without it. Or your body's like burning at football practice when you haven't been doing anything for 10 months.
Cuando has estado fuera de la práctica en fútbol y 10 meses han pasado y de repente estás haciendo ejercicio y sientes que tu cuerpo se quema.
Those are two different feelings, but they both feel like burning.
Son dos sentimientos distintos, pero los dos se sienten que te queman.
In basketball, the number one thing, I love basketball in high school, but the number one thing I hated doing was a workout called suicides.
En básquetbol, una de las cosas que odiaba hacer es uno de los ejercicios era llamado el suicidio.
You run to the free throw line, you go back, you go to the half court line, you go back, other free throw line back, then line and then back.
Corres al punto del tiro, a la canasta, después a la media cancha y regresas y vas así sucesivamente. Corres y vienes, corres y vienes.
Doesn't sound too hard, but when you have your teammates yelling at you, your coach yelling at you, and you have to touch every line, it makes it even worse.
Así como suena, no parece como fuera difícil, pero cuando tienes a todos, a tus compañeros, a tu coach, gritándote y diciéndote, y tú estás tocando línea por línea, sí es difícil.
Suicides in basketball is probably one of the greatest things you can do to improve your conditioning for a game.
Este tipo de ejercicio llamado suicidio es lo mejor que puedes hacer en el juego del básquetbol para mejorar tu juego.
Having faith when you walk through the daily fires of depression, because we all go through it, is the best thing you can do for your spiritual body.
Tener fe cuando estés pasando por momentos difíciles del fuego, de la prueba, es lo mejor que puedes hacer cuando estés atravesando por el fuego.
I like those verses.
Me gustan los versículos.
We're going to go to verse 29.
Vamos a ir al verso 29 de Hebreos.
It was by faith that the people of Israel went through the Red Sea as though they were on dry ground, and when the Egyptians tried to follow them, they were all drowned.
So,
29. Well, Hebrews 11 and 29.
Dice, fue por la fe que el pueblo de Israel atravesó el Mar Rojo como si estuviera pisando tierra seca, pero cuando los egipcios intentaron seguirlos, murieron todos ahogados.
When I read this, it really kind of stumped me for a little bit.
Cuando yo lo leí, por un momento como que me pegó un momento.
I never thought of it this way, I'll get back to it, but when I read this part, it always reminds me that they were complaining right before the sea split.
No había visto bien, pero me acuerdo que estaban quejándose un poquito antes de que el mar saliera.
It's easy for us to criticize the Israelites when they were complaining, like, oh, why did you bring us out of Israel? I mean, Egypt died.
Es muy fácil criticar al pueblo de Israel cuando decían, ay, ¿por qué nos sacaste de Egipto para que nos muriéramos? Muy fácil criticarlos a ellos.
Even though we had just read a little bit before in that story, 10 plagues.
A pesar de que acabamos de leer que no tenían mucho tiempo, ver que los israelitas habían pasado las 10, visto las 10 plagas.
The staff,
Ver la vara,
being guided by the fire,
siendo guiado por el fuego.
you know, all these things that they physically saw.
Todas estas cosas que ellos vieron físicamente.
All the battles, you know, they lived through the blood of the Lamb. It says that too. They put it in faith that the firstborn would live.
Todas las batallas que tuvieron, por ejemplo, ahí la plaga número 10, que creyeron que el primogénito viviría.
It's easy to criticize them, but that happens to us.
Es muy fácil criticarlos, pero eso nos pasa a nosotros.
It's easy to criticize someone when you're not living what they're going through.
Es muy fácil criticar a otros cuando tú estás pasando lo que ellos están pasando.
All the things that the Israelites had just saw were erased when they heard the
todo lo que los israelitas vivieron y experimentaron se les borró el cassette cuando escucharon.
They immediately forgot who they were getting guided from. They were scared of the firepower from the Egyptians coming forward, and they literally took their eyes off the fire that was directly over them.
Inmediatamente se les olvidó, quitaron la mirada del fuego o de la nube de una manera y empezaron a tener miedo.
It happens to us. Something
nos pasa a nosotros.
something can be right in front of our faces, something that God just did, but we don't see it.
Cuando nos pasa a nosotros, de repente algo llega delante de nosotros, está en el medio de nosotros, enfrente de nosotros y nos atemorizamos, no lo vemos.
Verse 30. It was by faith that the people of Israel marched around Jericho for 7 days and the walls came crashing down.
Fue por la fe que el pueblo de Israel marchó alrededor de Jericó durante 7 días y las murallas se derrumbaron.
What do you think I'm going to bring up?
¿Qué quieren que vaya a recordar?
The 08 trip and that.
El viaje de retiro, que mi papá siempre nos menciona.
Who was there?
¿Quién estuvo en el retiro? ¿Cuántos de ustedes? 6 con nosotros dos.
I literally wish everyone could have been there.
Yo realmente hubiese deseado que todos ustedes pudieran estar ahí.
Even though at this point it probably feels like you guys were already there how many times you've heard it.
Aunque yo creo que a este punto parece que ustedes ya han estado ahí tantas veces que lo han escuchado.
I can't remember every single detail as vividly as I want to, but I remember a lot.
No me puedo acordar cada detalle vivido tan claro, pero me puedo acordar de muchas cosas.
I think, Manny, you were in my car, right? You were in my car? In the Durango, we were driving around.
Oh, yeah.
And
He was too small. Yeah, I can't remember why he did last week. But
by that point, God had already shown us a lot.
para ese punto Dios ya nos había enseñado muchas cosas.
Spoken to us in insane ways.
Nos había hablado de una manera tan increíble.
I remember driving around for like 2.5 hours in the V8 Hemi.
Me recuerdo haber manejado 2 horas y media en ese motor peligroso.
We weren't talking, but in my head I was looking over at Manny. I was like, "Oh, we're not going to get
No estábamos hablando porque esas fueron las instrucciones, pero miraba a mí como que decía, bro, se me acaba el gas.
But that needle was not moving. It was crazy. It really was crazy.
Pero la aguja marcando el gas no se movía. Es algo tremendo, loco.
And I had been to that camp several times as a kid. Several times.
Y yo fui a ese campamento varias veces de pequeño.
And in my head I was thinking like, man, how are we going to get in this place? This place security is crazy at
Y
night.
yo decía en mi cabeza, ¿cómo nos vamos a meter a este lugar? La seguridad de este lugar en la noche específicamente es muy cerrada.
It really is. There's always people walking around with flashlights all everywhere.
De verdad, la seguridad es grande. La gente está caminando con lámparas, mirando.
As canijo as I was, I never even snuck out of the cabins. That's how hard it was.
Así como yo era de canijillo, no me salía de las cabañas en la noche, por eso.
At that point, I was like 80% faithful that we were going to get in there and do what God wanted us to do.
Hasta ese punto yo tenía como el 80% de fe de que íbamos a llegar y entrar a ese lugar.
To be honest, at that point, we got caught. I was just feeling like shit.
Para ser honesto, sí, yo no apuntaba,
Yeah, so everywhere we parked,
Si algo pasa, él es el culpable.
we parked and we were walking up to the main sanctuary. It's always locked. It really, really always is.
Nos estacionamos y llegamos al santuario principal donde siempre estaba cerrado, bien asegurado.
And I remember I was right behind my dad and he opened the door and I remember vividly when that door opened, it was like I went to like the next level.
Cuando llegamos y todos nos paramos enfrente del santuario ahí y mi papá abrió la puerta, inmediatamente mi fe escaló a otro nivel.
And then when all the system was on, it was just another level.
Y luego cuando entramos y estaba todo encendido y el sistema de sonido todo encendido, escalé a otro nivel.
We had a full service without anything. I was okay, we're good. Another level.
Tuvimos un servicio completo, sin ningún problema, sin ninguna dificultad y escalé a otro nivel.
We got to that next church, the the Asian church that looked exactly like the one on the Bible that God told us about, with the exact yellow sign saying, welcome.
Después de ahí llegamos a esta otra iglesia donde encontramos que se parecía muy con el letrero de bienvenida amarillo que el Señor nos había mostrado en la Biblia.
I was ready to kick the doors open, to be honest, at that point.
Cuando yo llegué con la fe que tenía que llegar y abrirlas con una patada las puertas.
And then we went in there and literally you hear them snoring. I don't know why they're sitting in church, but you hear them snoring.
Cuando llegamos literalmente estamos escuchando a las personas que estaban ahí roncando. ¿Por qué la gente le toqué en la iglesia? No lo sé.
And if you think about it at that point, we're in church at 3 a.m. and there's people sleeping and there's 45 people worshiping in the other room.
O sea,
in the middle of Wisconsin.
Nosotros entramos, la gente está durmiendo, está roncando, somos 45 personas, eran 42 personas y no sé qué onda, o sea, estamos ahí adorando y no me imagino que podía pensar la gente que estaba ahí.
And we left, and at that point, I was like, the cars are about to fly away. You know, we're going to go somewhere.
Cuando salimos de ahí, yo sentí que los carros les iban a salir alas, iban a volar.
It really was crazy, you know. And then,
de verdad, pues fue algo muy especial.
You know, I'm sure everyone that was there, their faith was just, you could do anything at that point. Any question.
Estoy seguro que hasta ese punto la fe de todos había escalado de tal manera que podemos creer cualquier cosa.
Those are gifts from God.
Esos son dones regalos de Dios.
He allows us those victories for our faith to grow and grow and grow and grow.
Nos permite esas victorias para creer y crecer.
Especially if you trust in Him.
Especialmente si confiamos en Él.
I remember we were at Silver Lake, and I think it was my mom that came over to take my contacts off, because at that moment I thought I was going to have perfect physical vision.
Yo me recuerdo cuando ya llegamos al siguiente día y estábamos en Silver Lake, y llega mi mamá y empieza para quitarme los lentes de contacto. Y yo creía que yo iba a tener una visión 100% física.
I remember that. I didn't even hesitate. I really 100% believed that I would, and I am very physically blind.
Y yo ni siquiera lo dudé. Y yo estoy ciego.
I'm really blind.
Soy un cegatón. Estoy bien ciego.
If I took my contacts out, I wouldn't be able to point out my beloved wife.
Si me quito los lentes de contacto, ni siquiera puedo identificar a mi amada esposa.
And at that point, I remember I took them off and I didn't even care.
Y me acuerdo que en esa ocasión me los quité y ni siquiera me interesó.
And even though my faith was a little deterred,
aunque mi fe estaba un poquito como que un poquito de turbulencia.
God was telling us, each and every one of us there, that eventually we would not see things the way the world sees them. We would have perfect vision.
Dios nos había dicho que miraríamos las cosas no como los demás los miran, aunque no tuviéramos visión perfecta.
And by the grace of God, it was the summer of 2018 for me when that vision, so 10 years later, finally kicked in.
Y por la gracia de Dios, no fue sino hasta 10 años después que esa palabra profética vino a ser una realidad en mi vida.
So now we're being guided by my mother, who can't even get to McDonald's. There's other.
Dios nos está guiando a través de mi mamá, que no sabe ni cómo llegar a McDonald's.
You know, you get those.
Como vienes de la mano, ya saben la historia.
3 numbers. The first one I was like.
Llegamos.
2. I was like.
Ahora en la Biblia nos da un número.
At that point, I was like. But then the third one, I was like, oh, okay, we're good.
Nos da otro número, nada. Pero cuando nos da el tercer número.
I was like, maybe God spoke English to her or something. And we all went to sleep that night. We all got ready for bed. Some, I think, took showers, you know, and we were all 100% confident that we were going to be there for that night.
Llegamos a esa casa, nos metimos, nos fuimos a dormir y tuvimos la fe total, completa, de que nos íbamos a descansar hasta el siguiente día.
Why? Because of everything we had just lived through.
¿Por qué? Por todo lo que acabamos de vivir horas antes.
It's easy when you come off a string of victories like that to have faith in the next battle.
Cuando tú tienes ese tipo de victorias y esa fe que aumentó, es muy fácil enfrentarte a la siguiente batalla. con esas victorias encima.
Sometimes God checks us and our sinful nature starts getting a little cocky and we're walking and we get distracted and we stop looking at God and then we trip when something happens.
Y a veces el orgullo, la vanidad, nuestra naturaleza pecaminosa, pues nos traiciona y empezamos a como que, o sea, como que queremos que todo lo va a hacer y de repente, sorpresa.
And like those Egyptians' horns that were on the horizon, when we saw those lights, everyone's faith just went.
Así como los israelitas vieron al ejército acercarse, nosotros cuando vimos las luces de la policía en la casa, todos como que
Some more than others.
algunos más que otros,
Some people had papers, some people didn't.
algunos tenían papeles,
So
algunos no,
understandable.
es entendible, los que no tenían papeles,
You know, again, some of us were mine. So like what if my parents brought me?
algunos pues éramos menores de edad, así que mi papá me trajo.
You know, but despite everything we had just lived in the previous 48 hours, a lot of us were confused at that moment.
Pero a pesar de todo lo que habíamos vivido por las últimas 48 horas, en ese momento, algunos estábamos, o varios estábamos confundidos en ese momento de lo que estábamos.
Scared at that moment.
Y asustados por un momento.
Not exactly sure, like, God, why did you bring us all the way here to get arrested?
No tan seguros de por qué Dios nos llevó hasta ese momento para que nos arrestaran.
I always find it funny the similarities between that moment when the Israelites looking at the Red Sea and nowhere to go, and the Egyptians, and that moment that God allowed us to live and witness.
Encuentro yo muchas similitudes entre ese momento cuando estábamos en la casa y llegan las autoridades para querernos arrestar, con el pueblo de Israel enfrentándose al Mar Muerto y al Mar Rojo, perdón, y llegando el ejército de Faraón. Muchas similitudes.
Faith is the confidence that what we hope for will actually happen. It gives us assurance about things that we cannot see.
La fe es la confianza, la convicción, la seguridad de que las cosas van a suceder, las cosas que no esperamos, que no podemos ver.
It's more important this time, what's been going on in the world, to have faith.
Es muy importante, especialmente en este tiempo, en esta hora del mundo, tener fe por lo que está pasando.
To pray for our brothers and sisters to continue to have faith through the fires of depression, through the waters of the deep.
Para orar por nuestros hermanos y nuestras hermanas para que tengan fe cuando atraviesen por las aguas profundas o pasen por el fuego.
Right now, that heat is turned up 7 times like a furnace.
Porque ahora el horno ha sido encendido, calentado 7 veces más.
That water is 10 feet tall. We're all slowly swimming, trying to stay afloat.
Las aguas están profundas, más de 10 pies, y estamos tratando de mantenernos a flote.
So remember the all stars of faith when you're going through your battle, when you're going through your deep waters, when you're feeling the fires of depression.
Así de que acuérdense de los hombres de la fe, cuando estén pasando por dificultades, cuando las estén viendo negras, cuando estén en el fuego, cuando estén pasando por aguas profundas.
Because God will always keep His promises,
Porque Dios siempre mantendrá sus promesas,
even if you don't physically see it.
aunque tú no lo veas.
Amen.